The 2012 NHL draft is one of the most disappointing drafts in recent memory in terms of a lot of the top prospects not really turning out to be the players they were drafted to be, with guys like the number 1 overall pick Nail Yakupov and the 4th overall pick Griffin Reinhart not even in the NHL anymore. So with everything we know about all these players now, I'm gonna go back and redraft the entire first round of the 2012 NHL draft. And I'm kinda gonna be basing it off of their career so far and a little bit of how good they are right now, so I have to take both of those into consideration. And always, if you guys are new around here and have been enjoying the content, feel free to click that subscribe button and click the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. With the 30th overall pick, I have the Los Angeles Kings selecting Colin Miller. Now, they originally took him in the 5th round of the 2012 draft, so they're basically just using a higher pick to get him. He didn't end up playing a game with the Kings, but maybe if their front office knew then what we know about him now, they would have decided to keep him around. Moving on now to the number 29 pick, I have the Devils selecting defenseman Cody Ceci, who was originally selected 15th overall by Ottawa. Now, Cody Ceci is a polarizing player. A lot of people don't like him, some people do, but he is definitely an NHL caliber defenseman, and all things considered, in a redraft, I definitely think he'd still be a first round pick. With the 28th overall pick, I have the New York Rangers selecting Radek Faksa, who was originally selected 13th overall by the Stars. And Faksa didn't really turn out to be a star caliber player, but he's just very solid in the role that he plays, and so far this season he's playing well with 12 points in 28 games. With the 27th pick, I have the Arizona Coyotes. At the time they were Phoenix, but nonetheless I have them selecting Vinny Hinostroza, who was originally a 6th round pick by the Blackhawks. Now, Hinostroza obviously is now a current member of Arizona. He came over in a trade from the Hawks, had a really good season last year, has been a little bit disappointing to start this season, but has turned it up a little bit of late. I'm a big fan of his game. I think he has a lot of potential. Next up, with the 26th pick, I have the Vancouver Canucks selecting Josh Andersen, who was originally selected in the 4th round by the Blue Jackets. Now, Josh Andersen has gotten off to a very disappointing start to this season. He's a -7 with only 1 goal in 20 games, and this is a guy who just scored 27 last year, so maybe that was a fluke, but I'm still pretty confident he can be a consistent 20-goal guy. With the 25th pick, I have the St. Louis Blues selecting defenseman Ryan Murray, who was originally the 2nd overall pick in this draft. Now, Murray isn't a bust by any means, but he definitely has been pretty disappointing considering he was selected 2nd. Right now, he's kind of just a solid 2nd pairing defenseman, and I think in a redraft he would still 100% be a first rounder. Moving on now to pick 24, and I have the Boston Bruins selecting defenseman Esa Lindell, who was originally taken 74th overall in the 3rd round by the Stars. Over the past couple of years, Lindell has definitely shown his offensive upside, had 32 points last year, and so far this season has 8, and he's not a defensive monster by any means, but he's just a really solid top 4 two-way guy. With the 23rd pick, I have the Florida Panthers selecting forward Connor Brown, who was originally a 6th round pick by the Maple Leafs. Now, Brown hasn't really been able to show the finishing ability that he showed in his rookie season where he had 20 goals, but his overall game is definitely the best it's ever been with Ottawa. He's a great penalty killer, and he's producing some pretty good numbers as he has 15 points in 27 games. With the 22nd pick, I have the Penguins selecting defenseman Erik Gustafsson. Now, he was originally selected in the 4th round by the Oilers, but in classic Oilers fashion, they didn't sign him to a contract, and then he was scooped up by the Blackhawks. And yeah, it's kind of a small sample size with him, but last year 60 points in 79 games, and the year prior 16 points in 35 games. He's shown that he can be an elite offensive defenseman in the NHL, even though he is struggling a little bit this season. Next up, with the 21st pick, we have the Calgary Flames selecting defenseman Brady Skjei, who was originally selected 28th in 2012 by the Rangers. Now, Brady Skjei came in and had a great rookie season, put up 39 points, but the following 2 years only 25 points, and his defensive game definitely didn't look as good, so it was kind of disappointing. So far this season, he's bounced back with 10 points in 24 games, and his overall game definitely looks better this year than it has the past 2 years. With the 20th pick, I have the Philadelphia Flyers selecting defenseman Damon Severson, and over the past 4 years with the Devils, he's just looked like a very solid offensive defenseman, and he is definitely an offensive defenseman. He's not a guy you're going to throw out there to shut down the other team's top line, but still, he definitely contributes a good amount of points, and even though he's off to a disappointing start to the season, I still think he'd be a top 20 pick if there is a redraft. Moving on now to the 19th overall pick, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning selecting Alex Kerfoot. He came in and had a great rookie season with 43 points, 19 goals, and followed that up with another 40-point season with the Avs. Obviously then was traded to Toronto this past summer in the Tyson Barrie trade, and I think he was an underrated piece of that move. Moving on now to the 18th pick, I have the Chicago Blackhawks selecting Tanner Pearson, who was originally the last pick of the 2012 draft. And Tanner Pearson was just pretty solid and consistent for the LA Kings, but now it seems like he's really found a good home in Vancouver, as he's been a great fit for them and is off to a great start to this season. With the 17th pick, I have the San Jose Sharks selecting Andreas Athanasiou. Had a great season last year. It was a breakout year for him of 30 goals and 50 plus points, and definitely would be a lot higher if he wasn't so disappointing to start this season. Only 5 goals so far and is a team worst minus 29. His overall game definitely needs a lot of work, but still so much offensive upside. Next up, with the 16th pick, I have the Washington Capitals selecting Tom Wilson, the exact same spot he was actually selected in the 2012 draft. I think he's just a great fit for Washington, and albeit he is one of the most hated players in the league, he actually doesn't get a lot of credit for being a very good hockey player. He's the perfect guy to play alongside Ovechkin, and so far this season he's already at 10 goals in 28 games and has 19 points, and is doing a good job of just focusing on hockey and staying out of trouble. Next up, with the 15th pick, I have the Ottawa Senators taking defenseman Hampus Lindholm, who was originally the 6th pick by the Ducks. I don't think the Ducks were unhappy with that pick because he has turned out to be just a very consistent and solid two-way defenseman for them. He's not a guy who's going to wow you with points. His career high is 34, but he's just very steady and you always know what you're going to get from him. Moving on now to pick 14, and I have the Buffalo Sabres getting their goaltender and selecting Matt Murray. And I know at the start of the video I said for the most part this draft was kind of disappointing, but man was it ever a good draft for goalies. And over the years Buffalo has struggled to find a good number one, and I think Murray would be the perfect fit for them. He has struggled a little bit this season with Pittsburgh, and maybe Tristan Jarry's pushing to take that starting job, but still, Matt Murray, just from what he's done in his career so far, is 100% a top 15 pick in a redraft. Moving on now to pick 13, I have the Dallas Stars selecting defenseman Shayne Gostisbehere, and like a lot of other players I've talked about, he has struggled so far this season, but after I made that video on him a couple days ago, he immediately scored against Detroit that night. And if he plays like we know he can, and that is one of the best offensive defensemen in the league, I really can't see him going any lower than 13th in a redraft. With the 12th overall pick, the Sabres selecting again, and I have them this time taking defenseman Matt Dumba, who was originally selected 7th by Minnesota. And over the past couple of years, Dumba has turned himself into a very good two-way defenseman. In 2017-18, that was really his breakout season. He had 50 points and was very good in the first round of the playoffs against Winnipeg as well. And then this past season, Dumba was on a ridiculously good pace to start the year, but unfortunately that season got cut short with injury, and like a lot of other players in this list, for some reason he's struggling to start this season, but still one of the best players from the class in my opinion. Moving on now, with the 11th pick, I have the Washington Capitals selecting defenseman Jacob Trouba, and again, like a lot of other players this year from this class, he's struggling this season with the Rangers, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt because it does take a little bit of time to get used to a new team. But nonetheless, Jacob Trouba is a horse on the blue line, and while yes, maybe he is a little bit overpaid, he's still a top pairing defenseman. And now getting into the top 10, starting off with the Lightning and them selecting Teuvo Teravainen, who was originally the 18th pick in the draft by the Hawks. And it seems every year Teravainen gradually just gets better, and last season he had the best year of his career with 76 points in 82 games, and this season he's gotten better again as he's almost at a point per game pace with 26 in 27 games. After coming over from the Hawks to the Canes, he's just been fantastic for them. With the 9th pick, I have the Winnipeg Jets selecting Alex Galchenyuk, and remember, a lot of this is based off of their career so far, and he's already played 508 NHL games, so I'm not just going to bump him down too far just because over the past 2 years he hasn't been the greatest. This is a guy who has had a 20-goal season, a 30-goal season, hit 50 points twice, and still has a lot of untapped potential, and even though he's struggling this season with Pittsburgh, it is a new team for him, and I think it's only a matter of time before he really gets going. With the 8th overall pick, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins selecting defenseman Colton Parayko. Now, with this pick, they originally selected Derek Pouliot, so they would be pretty pumped to get a guy like Parayko instead. Even though he doesn't put up a ridiculous amount of points, he is one of the best overall defensemen in the NHL. He was a huge part of their run to the Stanley Cup, and so far this season he's not doing too bad offensively either, as he does have 12 points in 28 games. Moving on now to the 7th overall pick, I have the Minnesota Wild selecting defenseman defenseman Jaccob Slavin, and like I said about Colton Parayko, he's not going to wow you with points, but he is definitely one of the best defensemen in the league. I've said on the channel multiple times, I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league, and in a redraft, I think he would be a lock to go top 10. Next up, with the 6th overall pick, I have the Anaheim Ducks selecting Tomas Herti. Now, he had an amazing breakout season last year with 74 points, and also had 15 points in 19 playoff games. He's a guy who definitely can be a #1 center in this league, and he's off to a pretty solid start this season as well. With the 5th overall pick, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs selecting Frederik Andersen. Now, he actually was originally drafted in 2010 in the 7th round by Carolina, but went unsigned and re-entered the draft in 2012, and then was picked in the 3rd round by the Ducks, and obviously he ended up with the Toronto Maple Leafs anyway, so nothing really changes here except they're getting him instead of Morgan Reilly. But Freddie Andersen is definitely one of the best goalies in the NHL, and he doesn't really get the credit that he deserves in most cases. Moving along now, with the 4th overall pick, I have the New York Islanders selecting Connor Hellebuyck, and remember I said this was a great draft for goaltenders. He's one of the reasons why, as he was a steal by the Winnipeg Jets. And so far this season, he's playing like a Vezina candidate, just like he did in the 2017-18 season. Hellebuyck is definitely one of the best goalies in the league, and I'm pretty confident that in any redraft he should be top 5. Moving on now to the 3rd overall pick, I have the Montreal Canadiens selecting Andrei Vasilevskiy, and obviously I didn't really take team needs into consideration too much in this video because why would they draft a franchise goalie when they already have one? But Vasilevskiy is definitely a can't miss talent, and the point I'm trying to make is in a redraft I think 100% he should be top 3. Next up, with the 2nd overall pick, I have the Blue Jackets selecting defenseman Morgan Reilly. Now, I feel like they would draft Reilly because he's kind of the player they wanted Ryan Murray to become. And could you imagine if they drafted Reilly and then they still ended up with Seth Jones and Zach Werenski? That would be an absolutely disgusting young blue line. And now finally, with the #1 overall pick, I have the Oilers selecting Filip Forsberg. And again, same situation with Columbus in the 2nd pick. I feel like Forsberg is kind of the player that they wanted Nail Yakupov to be. In my opinion, Forsberg would be a superstar already had he have not been injured so often over the past 2 years, but unfortunately that is the case. This is a guy who 100% can be over a point per game in my opinion and be one of the league's best goal scorers. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. I put a lot of work into this one and it was very difficult, and obviously we're not going to agree on where every single player should land. So if you guys did disagree with some of my picks, make sure to let me know down in the comment section below what yours would look like. And with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in tomorrow's video.